A family in Vermont moved into a 120-year-old farmhouse. On their first night, their daughter Lily, age 6, told them, "The girl upstairs says the walls are too loud." There was no upstairs, only a sealed attic with no access. They ignored it until Lily began leaving notes on the floor, written in messy crayon. "Tell her to stop crying. She doesn't like the dark. She said don't open the attic." The father finally pried open the attic hatch. Cold air poured down, dust, cobwebs, and a small rocking chair facing the wall. He snapped a picture, looked at it on his phone. There was a little girl sitting in the chair. When he looked again, she wasn't there. That night, Lily screamed at 3 a.m. "She's in my room. She's mad you opened her door." They ran in and found claw marks on the wall behind Lily's bed, fresh, long, and human-sized. They moved out in 2 days. The house is empty now. But sometimes neighbors hear a little girl singing inside. Real estate agents refuse to show the attic. A man named Darren stayed in a cheap motel off Route 66 during a snowstorm. The room felt wrong immediately. Heavy air, cold floor, weird smell. Around 2 a.m., Darren woke to someone whispering, "I'm cold." He bolted upright. The room was empty. Then the whisper came again. "I'm under here." It came from under the bed. Darren grabbed his phone and used the front camera as a mirror so he wouldn't have to bend down. The screen showed darkness, then something pale, then a face pressed against the bottom of the mattress looking straight up. He froze, unable to breathe. The voice whispered again, "Move. He's coming." Darren sprinted out of the room barefoot, ran to the front desk, and brought the manager back. When they lifted the mattress, nothing. But the floor was wet, as if someone had been crawling there. The next morning, the manager quietly told him, "You're not the first person to complain. 3 people have reported someone under the bed. Room 17 was part of a police case. Man died under there in 1998. They said he never really left." Darren checked out without saying a word. He never slept in a motel again. In Arizona, there's a drainage tunnel locals warn tourists about. Kids call it the echo tunnel, because when you shout, something shouts back, not an echo, something else. A teenager named Luis walked through it on a dare with 2 friends. They joked, kicked rocks, flashed their phones at the graffiti. Halfway in, Luis said, "Hello?" Something answered, not echoed, "Hello." Same tone, same voice, but a half-second too late. His friends laughed until they realized Luis hadn't said anything else. But the tunnel kept talking. "Come here," it called. A dark silhouette appeared at the far end, tall, thin. Its head scraped the tunnel ceiling. Luis whispered, "Don't move." But the silhouette started walking, each step perfectly synchronized with theirs. When they backed away, it backed away. When they stopped, it stopped. So Luis tried something else. He lifted his hand. The figure didn't. It just tilted its head, then ran at them. Not human running, no footstep sounds, just gliding at them at impossible speed. The boys sprinted out, screaming. Once outside, they looked back. Nothing came out. 2 weeks later, Luis's phone alarm started going off at exactly the same time every night, 2:14 a.m. He didn't set it. The label on the alarm read, "Turn around." There was a woman in Ohio named Marissa who lived on the second floor of an old apartment building facing the woods. It was quiet, boring, predictable, until the knocking started. It was past midnight on a windy Tuesday when she first heard it. Tap, tap, tap. A light, polite knock on her bedroom window. She froze. Her window was 12 feet off the ground. Probably a branch, she whispered to herself. But when she pulled back the curtain, nothing. Just trees and darkness. The next night, tap, tap, tap. She lifted the curtain again, still nothing. By the fourth night, she was done playing. When the tapping began, she whispered, "What do you want?" And the tapping answered her. Not random, not chaotic. 3 slow taps, then 3 more, perfectly mimicking her voice's rhythm. Something had been listening. Marissa backed away from the window, heart pounding. She grabbed her phone and snapped a photo through the glass. Just darkness. But when she checked the photo later, she saw it. A face pressed against the window. Wide grin, no eyes. Skin stretched too tightly. And the worst part? It wasn't looking at the camera. It was looking directly at her. She moved out the next morning. But last year, a new tenant posted online. "Does anyone else hear knocking on the second floor windows at night? I swear it's copying me." It was a crisp October evening when the Johnson family moved into their new home in Westfield, New Jersey. The house was beautiful, but the air felt heavy, as though the walls themselves were holding their breath. A week later, a letter arrived. The envelope was thick, yellowed, and addressed simply, "The Johnsons, 657 Boulevard." Inside, a handwritten note chilled them to the bone. "We have watched this house for decades. You do not belong here. We will be watching." At first, they laughed it off as a prank, but the letters kept coming. More letters, every few days, describing their routines, their comings and goings, their children. One night, Sarah Johnson awoke to the faint sound of breathing outside her bedroom window. She pressed her face to the glass and saw nothing but shadows. The next morning, mud tracks were discovered circling the house. "Did you hear that?" Sarah whispered to her husband Mark as they tiptoed through the dark hallway. A soft tapping echoed from the attic, growing louder with each step they took. When they finally called the police, the letters stopped. Until the morning they found a new message, scrawled in red on the living room wall. "You shouldn't have called them. Now, we are inside. No one was ever caught, and the house has remained vacant ever since. A shell haunted by the unseen eyes of the watcher." Lila, 17, sat alone in the living room, babysitting the Miller children. The night was unnaturally quiet, broken only by the occasional creak of the old floorboards. Her phone rang. The caller ID read, "Unknown." "Have you checked the children?" whispered a distorted voice. Shivering, Lila rushed upstairs. The kids were asleep, safe. She tried to call the police, but the line was dead. Minutes later, the phone rang again. "I'm upstairs." Heart racing, she barricaded the door. Every shadow seemed alive. Every whisper echoed in her ears. She called 911 from her cell, trembling. By the time the police arrived, the intruder had vanished. But under the children's beds, scratched into the wood, were words that made her scream, "I watch while you sleep." Years later, the same family discovered they weren't the first to receive these calls. Some said it was a local urban legend, but Lila knew the terror was terrifyingly real. In Key West, Florida, there exists a doll unlike any other. Robert, a small lifelike doll, sits in a glass case at the East Martello Museum. But locals warn, never provoke him. Legend says Robert belonged to a painter named Robert Eugene Otto. Strange accidents and misfortunes plagued anyone who disrespected the doll. Visitors reported it moving on its own, laughing softly in the night, even leaving the room to appear in hallways. One night, a young couple dared to mock the doll, taking selfies with it. The photos developed strange distortions, eyes bleeding, smiles stretching impossibly wide. The couple awoke in the morning to find their home ransacked, Robert's tiny fingerprints smeared across every wall. When asked about the doll, museum curators simply say, "Respect Robert, or he will follow you home." Some swear they've seen him on the front porch of their homes in the dead of night. And the whispers, they always say the same thing. "I am watching.